Hello and welcome to the JSA Studio. I'm your host, as always, Nathan, and today we're going to be doing a mock draft. We're just going to be doing one round only. We are not going to be doing trades. Basically, what I want to do here is get some of my opinions on some players out there early on in the process. They will likely change as it goes on, but we're going to go ahead and just do a quick little mock draft for everybody here, starting with the Bears at the first pick. This is one of the most interesting picks in the entire draft, mainly because the first pick is always interesting, but also because the Bears are an interesting team. Now, if you're asking me what I would do, I would probably sit here and take Caleb Williams, which is what we're going to be doing. I would then look to shop Justin Fields along with maybe a day 2 pick and try to get back into the first round somehow. I think Justin Fields' value as a football player right now is probably equivalent to an early second round pick. He does have 2 years left. His 5th-year option will likely be taken, and he does have 2 years of cheap quarterback play and very, very high upside. So I do think that he does have some pretty strong value. But I'm going to be taking Caleb Williams with this pick. We have the other top 10 pick. If I didn't have that other top 10 pick and I was the Bears, I probably wouldn't take Caleb Williams. I would probably take Marvin Harrison number 1. However, we do have that second pick here. So to pair that with a solid offensive line, which is what the Bears have, I think Caleb Williams is a good pick up here. And with that second pick at number 8, we're going to be able to address another position to potentially get him some help. Now, the Arizona Cardinals, I don't think they're as bad as perhaps their record shows. I really like the head coach. I think he's going to get this team to a point where they're at least solid. And a big part of that is going to be taking Drake May. I'm not a particularly big believer that Kyler Murray is actually a high-level quarterback in the NFL. I think he is firmly in the bottom half of the second tier of quarterbacks in the NFL. And basically what that means is that there's the 5 or 6 guys that are the best guys in the NFL. And then there's a bunch of guys in the next level that make up about probably between 7 to 10 players in the entire NFL at the starting quarterback position, where you're like, okay, they need more help than the other guys and they're not proven winners, but you could probably win with them. And I think Kyler Murray is towards the bottom of that tier of quarterbacks. And I think Drake May has the potential to be a first-tier quarterback. Kyler Murray, at this point in his career, does not. And yes, Kyler Murray does not have a whole lot of help in Arizona right now, which is why they suck. And I personally believe that they will be better off going with Drake May and trying to trade Kyler Murray potentially for a first-round pick in this year or next year's draft class than they would be to try and stick with Kyler Murray and to take a wide receiver or an offensive tackle here, when I don't think that is the best course of action. I think they should probably just look to trade Kyler Murray and to take Drake May. If they don't end up with the second pick of the draft, then I'm keeping Kyler Murray. But I really, really like Jaden Daniels too. So that would be more of a conversation than it would be with Drake May. Drake May is probably going to end up as one of the 4 best quarterbacks that I've ever given a grade to. Caleb Williams has a very good opportunity to end up number 1, but Drake May is probably ending up top 5. I don't think Jaden Daniels is in that same tier yet. I haven't particularly looked all that closely at his film quite yet, but I do really, really like him, and honestly, that's why we're going to be taking him at number 3 here with Washington. I really, really like Jaden Daniels. I think he has the potential to be a Lamar Jackson-esque player in the NFL in terms of the running and throwing threat. I actually think he's a little bit more polished than Lamar Jackson in both of those areas than when Lamar Jackson was coming out, which is why I had Jaden Daniels going in the top 5, and I only had a top 10 grade on Lamar Jackson when he came out. But they have weapons in Washington. And Sam Howell has a lot of production. I get all of that. He's not the quarterback of the future. Stop it. I really like Sam Howell when he was coming out, but I had a top 50 grade on him as opposed to somebody that you would take in the first round. And basically, what that means, a top 50 grade for me at the quarterback position would mean I think you're a third tier quarterback where it's like you're not going to be the reason your team wins, but you're not going to be the reason that they're going to lose either. And Sam Howell has not lived up to that. He has been the reason that the Commanders have lost several football games this year. So I do think Jaden Daniels would be a massive upgrade there. I don't know what their head coaching situation is going to look like, but I do genuinely believe that Washington has the roster to be competitive enough, at least offensively. They're just a quarterback away. So taking that guy at the quarterback position, which is what I think Jaden Daniels is, should be the way that they go, in my opinion. And we're doing what I would do. So, yeah, we're going to be doing that. Moving on to the 4th pick of the draft, the New England Patriots are on the clock. And there is actually a quarterback here that I would be comfortable taking, but that quarterback is so far out of the thought process for pretty much everybody in the NFL draft community right now that I'm not going to bother putting him in here quite yet, especially considering that I haven't done all of my work on all of the quarterbacks this year. So we're going to go ahead and just leave him out of it, and we're going to instead do maybe something that could perhaps help a quarterback on the roster this year. There is also several free agent options at quarterback that they could go, or through trades or something else. So they don't have to draft a quarterback here at 4, but I'm going to have them taking Marvin Harrison Jr. He may or may not be the best player in the draft class, and I think prioritizing him over a tackle, considering the tackle depth that there is in this class, as well as the wide receiver depth. There is very, very, very good wide receiver depth, but I think a lot of them are going to be gone in the first round and in the early second round. So you could be looking at tackle maybe 5 or 6 at the top of the second round, or you could be looking at wide receiver 9, potentially 10, or maybe even 11 by the time they get to pick in the second round. So we're going to go ahead and take the wide receiver here. And plus, I think there's much more of a drop-off between Marvin Harrison and wide receiver 9 than there is between tackle 1 and tackle 6. I think there's a much bigger drop-off there. So we're going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. here with the 4th pick of the draft. With the 5th pick of the draft, we're going to do something maybe a little bit out of left field for the Giants. Obviously, you want the quarterback. You're kind of stuck with Daniel Jones, Mr. Vanilla Vic, for the foreseeable future, at least through one more season. You can't cut him. You can't trade him without taking on a very large cap hit, which is not the case for Kyler Murray for when we were talking about trading him as well. So we're going to do something maybe that people would not be expecting out of this group. I'm not going to take a wide receiver here. I'm going to take Joe Alt, the offensive tackle from Notre Dame. Joe Alt is really, really, really good. I also think he's a relatively safe prospect. He may or may not end up my tackle 1, but it's who I would have the Giants take in this scenario, because Andrew Thomas at left tackle, when healthy, is legitimately one of the 5 to 10 best tackles in the NFL, regardless of left side or right side. And Evan Neal at right tackle, even though everybody loved him coming out of college, including me, just flat out and straight up hasn't been very good. He's been absolutely horrible through 2 years. So getting a right tackle here for Joe Alt is probably going to help out this team a whole lot more than taking a wide receiver. And there is tremendous depth in this wide receiver class, so maybe you could hop back in the second or third rounds and take a player that could be productive for you. I don't think that's the case for the tackle position. So we're going to take Joe Alt with the plans to put him at right tackle. Up next is the San Diego Chargers. Oh, whoops. They're not the San Diego Chargers. They're the Los Angeles Chargers, even though they're sure as fuck not from Los Angeles. Have you seen their goddamn stadium at home games? There's nobody there. So I don't know where they're from, but it sure as shit ain't Los Angeles. Anyway, the Chargers are up next, and I think a very popular selection for them, if this is how the draft breaks, is going to be Olu Fashanu, but that's not where I'm going to go. I'm going to go Malik Neighbors. I really, 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 really like Malik Neighbors. He's basically Jordan Addison, who I had a top 20 grade on last year, but a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, and probably just a tad bit more explosive with more top end speed than him as well. And we've all seen what Jordan Addison looks like for the Vikings this year. He's been absolutely phenomenal. I think Malik Neighbors is that, but a little bit better at just about everything. So I'm going to have the Chargers take him. They're going to get Justin Herbert, a player other than Keenan Allen, who can just flat out and straight up get open all the time, as well as take the top off the defense, which isn't really something that Keenan Allen can do. So I think this is going to be a very, very good pick for the Chargers. The Titans are up next at 7, and this, if this happens, they're sprinting to the podium to hand in Olu Fashanu. I actually think in the past few drafts, they've kind of gotten their guard situation figured out pretty well. I think whoever they took last year, whose name I'm blanking on, the kid out of Notre Dame, is going to end up being a very, very solid guard. And the year before that, they took Nicolas Petit-Frere, who was okay at right tackle, but has been pretty solid as a guard when healthy. So I really think that them adding a tackle here is going to do wonders for that team and their offensive line. Going forward with Will Levis at the quarterback position, they do also need a wide receiver, and Rome Odunze was in the conversation, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to instead take Olu Fashanu because I think it will actually help the team more than if they drafted another wide receiver. The Chicago Bears are at the next pick here, and this one is interesting because I could be talked into Rome Odunze here. I could be talked into Brock Bowers here, even though Cole Kmet has played very well of late. But I'm not going to do either of those things. Instead, I'm going to do what they should do, and as a Lions fan, what I desperately do not want them to do. And that's that they're going to take Laiatu Latu from UCLA. He is absolutely fantastic. He is the best edge rusher in this class by a mile. It is not a discussion. I am not fielding opinions on that. He is the best player in run defense at his position in this class, and he's a top 3 edge rusher in terms of the pass rush in this class. So I'm going to take him here at 8. I'm going to pair him with Montez Sweat, who has been absolutely unbelievable since you traded for him. He's completely changed the way that defense operates. That defense wasn't very good the first half of the season. Then the trade deadline, you get Montez Sweat. Now all of a sudden, Yannick Ngakoue can do what he's always done, which has been the second best pass rusher on a team and been productive. But when he's the focal point, he sucks. So getting another edge rusher, Yannick Ngakoue is only on a 1-year deal. You're going to replace him with Laiatu Latu, who is going to be way, way better than Yannick Ngakoue anyway in year 1. So you're going to have 2 extraordinarily talented and very, very good edge rushers in Chicago for a very long time, and that isn't what I want you to do, considering how good cornerback and linebacker play has been for you since the trade for Montez Sweat. The New York Jets are up next, And this would be a tackle position, but I don't think there's a tackle worth taking here. I think there's maybe one that after I watch the film a little bit more closely, I could potentially be talked into. But if it's not one of the top two guys, then I'm probably going to go with Rome Odunze here. Rome Odunze is absolutely incredible. He's 6'3". He runs routes like a guy who's 5'8" and runs a 4.2 40. He's absolutely fantastic. He's a very, very good contested catch wide receiver. And pairing him with Garrett Wilson will give, I think, probably the best chance for this team to be really, really good next year. Because all of the eggs that you have in your basket are on next year. Aaron Rodgers is probably not going to play after next year. I think it's one last ride for him. And then after that, you can worry about potentially a quarterback or potentially something else. So I'm going to do Rome Odunze here, who is absolutely worth a top 10 pick in this draft, and going to give Aaron Rodgers another weapon to throw the ball to. The Atlanta Falcons are up next, and this one is also interesting because, again, there is a quarterback that we could take here that I would be comfortable taking, but I don't think anybody else would be, as I've kind of talked about with the Patriots a little bit. So in this scenario here, it's a first-year head coach because I think Arthur Smith is getting fired. In this scenario here, I'm just going to sign a veteran and ride it out for a year. That's going to be my plan as a first-year head coach for the Atlanta Falcons. So I'm going to take someone who I think is going to make this team better instantly year one, and that is the best corner in this class, Kool-Aid McKinstry. I really, really, really like Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think he's the best corner in this class right now. My opinion could change. I do like other players as well. However, I think he has elite upside as both a man corner and a zone corner, and I can't particularly say that for anybody other than maybe one other player who's my cornerback 2, who we'll get to eventually in this draft class. But I do really like Kool-Aid McKinstry. I like the fit with this team, even though the fit is going to be questionable because they're not going to have the same defensive coordinator as this year in all likelihood next year. So depending upon who gets hired, this pick could change if they're a very heavy zone or very heavy man team, or if they're closer to what the average split for that is in the NFL, then that's probably going to change who they select here. However, I have Kool-Aid McKinstry as a almost scheme transcendent level prospect, so I really, really like him, and I'm going to have him go in the top 10 of this class. Number 11, the Saints, unlike Kyler Murray, but kind of like Daniel Jones, Derek Carr is not move-onable this year. So, like, you can't move on from him this year. And maybe you take a quarterback. I think now that we're outside of the top 10, a few of the other borderline quarterbacks, in terms of people talking about them in the first round, comes into play here. But that's not what I'm going to do, because I would rather try to have it work out with Derek Carr. Because if Derek Carr sucks next year, I'm going to be in my second year as a head coach, because I think Dennis Allen should be fired. But hypothetically, if this is a first-year head coach situation, which I believe it will be, then I think I'm going to be comfortable sucking in year one with Derek Carr. Or if Derek Carr plays good, then I don't particularly need to worry about the quarterback position. So I'm going to take a player to potentially help Derek Carr or the other quarterback that we draft in next year's draft class. And that's Brock Bowers, who's absolutely incredible. There's a very strong possibility that he will end up being the highest graded tight end that I have ever had. So I really like him. I think he's an instant impact player. And yes, the Saints do have some weapons, but they don't have a number one guy, in my opinion. Michael Thomas, maybe before he got hurt and missed 3 years of football straight, basically, he could have been a number one wide receiver. He's not a number one wide receiver anymore. Chris Olave is not a number one wide receiver either. He's a complementary piece. He's just elite at being that. So I'm going to get a number one target, and that's Brock Bowers. I think Brock Bowers is legitimately going to be a number one target in the NFL. The Green Bay Packers are on the clock at the 12th pick of the draft. And this one is also interesting because there aren't really any pressing needs on this team. Like, there's not anywhere that you can look at and say, oh yeah, that's a massive hole, because they've got talent at the wide receiver position, and adding another rookie in there isn't going to help anybody. And the offensive line, think hypothetically, if they're healthy, it could be really, really good. But I think the main problem is that they've got Zach Tom playing left tackle and right tackle this year when he really should be playing guard. So I am going to assume that our star left tackle can come back and play next year, which is a dangerous assumption, but that's what I'm going to assume. And then I'm going to move Zach Tom into right guard, and then we have Elton Jenkins at left guard. And then the center is what it is. We can pick a center later on or go after one in free agency. So I'm going to take a right tackle here, of which there are several. But my number one guy is Talonese Fuaga, who I think that's how you say his name. I'm not sure, though. I'm going to take him at right tackle, and I'm going to get an absolute mauler who is surprisingly athletic and can, I believe, be a Pro Bowl caliber right tackle in the NFL. So I'm going to take him. I think his floor is high enough to the point where he can start year one at right tackle. He will probably struggle with speed off the edge his first year, and guys that can convert speed to power as well. So he'll probably struggle a bit in pass protection his first year, but I think he's going to be a dominant run blocker day one, and that's going to help this team. So I'm going to take Talonese Fuaga. The 13th pick of the draft for the Las Vegas Raiders. This one is somewhat interesting because they simultaneously have a whole lot of needs and not all that many. Kind of like the Packers, this is a team where they do definitely have some needs, but none of them are really pressing, and they're all kind of on like the second tier of needs. Like, none of them are really all that bad. I do think you should stick with Antonio Pierce as your head coach, though. So I'm going to assume you do that, and I'm going to then take the best player available, which at this point is the only top 10 player left on my board, and that is Jared Verse out of Florida State. I absolutely love this kid. He's my edge 2. He came into this year as my edge 1. Laiatu Latu overtook him after about 4 weeks, but Jared Verse is still absolutely phenomenal. He would absolutely be worth a top 10 pick in my opinion. However, he does slide a little bit outside of the top 10 here. I think that having a edge rusher duo like this is going to help you phenomenally, especially considering what the teams in your division look like at the tackle position. Now, we had the Chargers select a tackle here, so they could potentially have a pretty good duo. But the Chiefs aren't particularly getting all that much better. They're kind of stuck with Jawan Taylor at right tackle, and he's honestly not very good when he is forced to line up correctly. So I think that is potentially a opportunity to be had there. And if you look at the Broncos, neither of their tackles are great. I think their left tackle, whose name I am blanking on at the moment, is solid. I think he's a good player, a above average tackle in the NFL. And their right tackle ain't a whole lot. He's just kind of there right now. So I think that this is potentially an opportunity for you to create mismatches. Now, speaking of the Denver Broncos, they're going to cut Russell Wilson, which I get it. You can't pay him what he's getting paid. I understand it. However, he didn't play bad this year at all. So I think that Sean Payton is still Sean Payton. He's an extraordinarily abrasive personality, but he's a hell of a football coach. And I think he's a very, very good quarterback developer as well. So I'm going to take a quarterback here, and it's not going to be the quarterback that you think it's going to be. I'm taking Bo Nix. I don't know if Bo Nix is a first-round caliber quarterback. I'm being honest with you. I think he's a first-round talent. I think he's physically talented enough as a quarterback to go in the first round. I also think he is a phenomenal scheme fit for what Sean Payton wants to do at the quarterback position. Sean Payton runs a lot of quick game stuff, and that's where Bo Nix really, really shines. And he does have the arm to go deep, and he does have the arm to be able to throw on the run and do a lot of these other things here. So even though his offense at Oregon was a little bit wacky, and there were a lot of layups and screen passes designed into the offense, I think he can say the same about what he's going to do in the NFL. And the Broncos have weapons at the wide receiver position. They've just never particularly been able to get the most out of them because they haven't had the quarterback play. So even though the offensive line is something that I also considered here, as well as potentially a interior defensive lineman, I don't think there's any interior D lineman worth taking here. And I don't really have a tackle that I'm comfortable taking here for the Broncos as well, as comfortable as I am for taking Bo Nix. Number 15, the Minnesota Vikings. I think you're looking at year one of a rebuild after this year. Now, maybe you can work out a deal with Kirk Cousins, but we've seen that song and dance before. You're going to be the same team that you were 2 years ago, which is bad defense, or at least a defense that doesn't have a whole lot of talent, and a offense that can score a lot of points but is remarkably inconsistent because Kirk Cousins is remarkably inconsistent as a quarterback. So I'm going to replace Danielle Hunter, who I think walks in free agency, especially if you re-sign Kirk Cousins. I don't think they're going to have the money to keep both of them. So I'm going to replace Danielle Hunter with Chop Robinson. I love Chop Robinson. He can power rush. He can speed rush. He's got moves and counter moves. He can do a whole lot of really, really good stuff for this defense. And assuming Brian Flores comes back or doesn't get a head coaching job, which I'm not sure if he's going to get a head coaching job or not, I think he would fit their scheme very, very well. The Arizona Cardinals with the 16th pick of the draft. Earlier on in this draft, we had them take Drake May. And here, how are we going to help Drake May? Are we going to take a tackle like we did last year for Paris Johnson? Or are we going to take a wide receiver? Or are we going to go on the defensive side of the ball? Well, I'm going to go wide receiver here. And I'm going to go a wide receiver that I am significantly higher on than both PFF and everybody else, and that's Keon Coleman. I love Keon Coleman. He is very close to the top 3 wide receivers in my opinion. I think he is wide receiver 4, but I think it's a very, very close conversation. I think there's a solid chance all 4 of these wide receivers end up in my top 10 ever grades. So I really, really like this receiving class, especially at the top 4 positions. Keon Coleman is an elite jump ball wide receiver with elite hands and is a remarkable athlete with the ball in his hands. He can make people miss and pick up yak. He is someone who I think complements what they have in the receiving core in Arizona as well. I think he's someone who will fit well with Drake May long term, and I think he's probably the best player on the board right now as well. Moving on to the 17th pick, the Pittsburgh Steelers. This one was kind of tough because this is a team that really needs a quarterback, but I'm not comfortable taking any of the quarterbacks that are legitimately in this conversation right now. Later on in the season, this might be a spot where you see the quarterback that I've alluded to several times in this video go, and that was Spencer Rattler. I'll just say it right now. That's Spencer Rattler. I am significantly higher on Spencer Rattler than pretty much everybody else right now. I do think he is someone who is going to rise throughout this draft process. But this might end up being a Spencer Rattler pick, but that's an extraordinarily unrealistic thing to talk about here, so I'm not going to take him. I did consider Michael Penix, but I don't think the Steelers are going to want to take him. I don't know how well he fits what they want to do in the offense. Like, people look at Michael Penix's completion percentage and they look at the great wide receivers and they think, oh, he's a distributor. That's not what he is. He is a strong arm quarterback that throws the ball deep. That's what he is. And that's not what the Steelers want, really, at the quarterback position right now. They want efficiency, and they want the ability to work the intermediate. And Michael Penix does not particularly fit that mold. So I'm going to go ahead and give Joey Porter Jr. a running mate with Nate Wiggins, who is my corner two by a relatively big margin. I really like Nate Wiggins. I think his highest upside is probably either in a press cover three or a press zone. He's got long arms. I think he's a tremendously good player, and I would be shocked if he made it outside of the top 20. The Cincinnati Bengals. This is a very popular spot for a wide receiver because they're likely going to miss or lose T. Higgins in free agency, but that's not where I'm going. I think Orlando Brown has been honestly kind of underwhelming at left tackle, but I still think he's okay. And I think he might just be having a down year and he'll probably have a bounce back year next year, but that's just my opinion. He was never an elite left tackle. He was an elite right tackle, but he was never an elite left tackle. He was just okay. And so I'm going to go ahead and take a offensive tackle here with my next highest graded tackle, who is still, I honestly still have a top 20 grade on, and that's J.C. Latham. I think J.C. Latham is going to be day one a dominant run blocker, not run defender, a dominant run blocker who is maybe not great in pass protection, but I think as the season goes on, he will learn how to adapt to the speed moves because this guy's like 6'7" and 360 pounds and very athletic. He's not going to get power rushed, even in the NFL. He's just not. So I think he will be able to deal with power day one as a pass protector, but I think it's going to be the skilled guys who can get off the snap really quick that are going to give him trouble. So, but I do believe that he will eventually figure out how to counter that, and he will be a very, very good tackle in the NFL on the right side of this Bengals offensive line. Next pick, Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 19. And you look at Tampa Bay, you're like, okay, they've got linebackers. They've got two solid corners. They've got some very good safeties. D-tackle, hypothetically, is all set with Kalijah Kancey, who's been absolutely horrible this year. But, who could have seen that coming? The answer was me. I had Kalijah Kancey as a third-round draft prospect. But, that's whatever. Vita Vea is fantastic. Kancey at least does provide some upside as a pass rusher. He's the worst run defensive tackle in the NFL, but that's, again, we don't need to talk about that. So I do think Tampa Bay, what they need is an edge rusher to go alongside Barrett. So I'm going to take Dallas Turner here. And Dallas Turner is a speed guy who does occasionally show the ability to convert speed to power. However, I do think he has the frame to add on about another 10 to 15 pounds and really get that power going without losing any of his athleticism. I do think he's more of a project than the edge rushers that I had going above him, though. He's a tremendous talent and absolutely deserving of this pick. The 20th selection of this class is the Indianapolis Colts. And it's the same kind of story with Dallas Turner, where you look at the defense and the offense. They don't have a whole lot of needs. You could look at wide receiver here. That is something that we could look at. But I'm not really comfortable taking any of the wide receivers that would go in this range because they're all kind of similar players to Michael Pittman, in my opinion. So instead, I'm going to take the last, no doubt, beyond a shadow of a doubt, first-round edge rusher, in my opinion, and that's Braylon Trice. So I'm going to go ahead and take him. It would be a little bit of a reach. I don't have a top 20 grade on him, but he's the last guy that I think is a surefire first-round pick at the edge rusher position. And that is really kind of their one true need on the defense, is a guy that can get after the quarterback consistently. Moving on to the pick of 21, we have the Seattle Seahawks. And you look at the Seattle Seahawks, I don't think this is a quarterback spot, but again, this could be a spot for Spencer Rattler. But I don't think that's where I'm going to go here. Or potentially even Michael Penix. But I don't like Michael Penix all that much. I've kind of done some more work on him since I did my video breakdown on him. And I don't like him as much as other people have been talking about him. And we'll talk about that when we talk about quarterbacks at some point in this offseason. But I'm going to take, with this position, what a lot of people would consider a reach, but I don't think it's a reach at all. We're going to jump over here to the interior offensive line. I'm going to take Jackson Powers Johnson. I think this guy is day one going to be a Pro Bowl caliber interior offensive lineman at either guard or center for the Seahawks. I think he stays at center. And I think he's going to help this offensive line tremendously day one. Now all of a sudden you can kick Evan Brown to guard where he's much better than at center, and you get Charles Cross and Lucas back next year, and this offensive line is looking like it looked like last year. So to go along with three really good wide receivers, a good tight end group, and a defense that is punching above their weight class right now, but still has a ton of talent on it. So I think Seattle is still one of the better rosters in the NFL. It's just that right now they have some glaring weaknesses along the offensive line. So I'm going to address that by taking the best center in this draft class in Jackson Powers Johnson, who a lot of people would consider this a reach. I don't. I have a top 40 grade on Jackson Powers Johnson, which means that I'd take him anywhere from 21 to 40 and be okay with it. So I really, really like Jackson Powers Johnson. So we're going to go ahead and take him here with the 21st pick of the draft. 22nd pick of the draft. This is another spot where guard or center could be on the table. But I don't really like anybody else like that in this class at the guard or center position. Maybe Zach Zinner if he was healthy, but he's not healthy. So we're not going there. Instead, I'm going to give a running mate to Tyson Campbell with the selection of Terrion Arnold, who I really, really like. He's a ball hawk. He's long. He's physical at the line. And he's probably the second best corner in college football right now behind his teammate. Moving on to the 23rd pick of the draft, the Los Angeles Rams are up. This would honestly be a very, very good spot for a more project type of quarterback to go, but I don't think that's very realistic. Matthew Stafford has been very, very, very good this year, borderline in elite caliber quarterback this year. So we're actually going to just go ahead and go best player available here. And now that we're outside of the top 20, I am comfortable taking Jerzon Newton. And I think Jerzon Newton is going to be somebody who perhaps struggles a little bit with the bigger and more powerful guards in the NFL in the run game. I think he is someone who, provided that an NFL caliber offensive lineman can get their hands on him, which is a big if, whether or not that can happen. However, provided that that can happen, he is not someone who I think has a whole lot of answers to that, just because he doesn't have a whole lot of power. He has some. He's not completely powerless like Elijah Cansey, but he is not all that powerful. He wins with quickness and technique, and I think the Rams will find a way to use him at a very, very high level. However, I do not think he's a top 20 type of pick. I still think he's a first round kind of guy, but I'm not as high on him as other people are. The Buffalo Bills are up next. There have been rumblings about a potential Stephon Diggs departure from this team. He's pretty clearly, I think, taken a step back from last year to this year. He's still a very good wide receiver, arguably a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. However, he's not the same player, and they don't have a whole lot else at the wide receiver position. So we're going to address the wide receiver position here with this pick by taking the next guy that I really, really, really like, and that's Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. Brian Thomas Jr. is a bigger body receiver. He's tremendously athletic. He's a smooth mover. He's explosive enough. He's not like Julio Jones explosive, but not very many people are. He's explosive when he needs to be, and he has a very, very big catch radius, which I think will help Josh Allen in the passing game. The Kansas City Chiefs are up next, and this is where maybe I'm getting a little bit weird with this one, okay? The Chiefs have some pretty solid potential at wide receiver. They don't have a whole lot right now, okay? The kid out of SMU, Rashee Rice, has been coming on of late, and he's kind of that 6'2", 210-pound kind of wide receiver. So we're going to go ahead and get Patrick Mahomes here, another player to throw the ball to here. But we're going to go with someone who still fits the team, but I think has potentially a little bit more upside. And this is another guy that I am higher on than most people, and that's Xavier Legette. I really, really, really like Xavier Legette. He is someone who, once he gets going, is very, very fast and very, very hard to bring down. He's a big-bodied receiver. It would not surprise me if he was 6'3" and 215, 220 pounds. He, I think, has a chance to run in the high 4.3s, if not probably the low 4.4s at the scouting combine in March. But I really think he fits this team very well. He doesn't drop the ball, which is another big thing for this Chiefs team. They have actually a lot of players that can actually get open and potentially make plays, but they all drop the balls when they're thrown at them. But Xavier Legette does not do that. It is not particularly a problem with him. So I think the Chiefs are really going to like him. I think he has a tremendous amount of upside, and I am higher on him than most people. With the 26th pick, the Dallas Cowboys are on the clock. And when it comes to Dallas, they don't have a whole lot of needs, except at positions where there's no way in hell I'm taking them this early. I think I could be talked into specifically one linebacker that I think is very, very good, but this is not a good linebacker class. But outside of that, you look at the interior defensive line, that's been kind of a problem. There ain't nobody worth taking right now. You look at the center position, nah. Running back, hell no. Corner, I'm not really sure that's a need. I don't really know why PFF has that listed as a need. Deron Bland is going to be a first-team All-Pro this year. You're going to get Trayvon Diggs back next year. And Gilmore has turned back the clock and turned into a legitimate borderline Pro Bowl caliber corner again. So he's very, very good. I'm not sure if you're going to stick around with him. Probably not, I imagine, but I don't think corner is a need. However, there is a solid possibility that they're using CB to represent the slot position. And slot is a massive need for this team. So we're going to go off the walls here a little bit. And this is the ultimate point of this is my mock draft and what I would do, okay? The slot position is not valued by the NFL very highly. I don't see a reason why it isn't. I think it's an extraordinarily valuable position, and having a very, very good slot corner is something that not a whole lot of teams in the NFL can say. In fact, most slot corners are not good at all. So we are going to take the slot corner in this draft. We're going to take the best slot corner in this draft, and that is Mike Sandersill, who I think is absolutely ridiculous that him being graded in like the 150s by Pro Football Focus. That's absolutely absurd. He is a day 2 pick, worst case scenario. The big thing for him is going to be if he actually measures 5'10", or is he more like 5'8", like people have been saying. If he's 5'8", he's not going to go in the first round. If he is 5'10", I think he's got a real possibility to go in the first round because his tape is absolutely outstanding. He has incredible ball instincts. He has great hands. He played wide receiver and was making one-handed catches all the time. And he forces fumbles. He's an excellent blitzer. He's like the whole package. You put him on special teams, he's going to be a special teams ace. I really, really like Mike Sandersill. And I think it's a phenomenal fit for this Cowboys defense that does not have a whole lot of needs outside of slot corner. Up next with the 27th pick of the draft, we have the Houston Texans. And this is a spot where I'm going to do what I want to do rather than probably what the team is going to do. And I'm going to take Troy Franklin. I really like Troy Franklin. I think he's a very good wide receiver. I think he made a lot of plays for Oregon this year. And I think he's a great fit with C.J. Stroud. Nico Collins is going to be your bigger X wide receiver. Troy Franklin, I think, can play all 3 wide receiver positions, but I think his best role at the next level will actually probably be as a Z, an off-the-ball sort of wide receiver, deep threat sort of player. The Texans do have someone that has been playing that role at a high level this year before he unfortunately got hurt in Tank Dell. However, I think Tank Dell's future in the NFL is in the slot exclusively. So I'm going to get Troy Franklin, who can play outside, inside, X, Y, Z, slot receiver, whatever you want him to be. I think he's going to be a very, very, very good player. Up next, we have the Detroit Lions, my team. And the biggest needs for this team are not what is being listed. Guard and center are not a need. The Lions have had arguably two of the top 5 guards in the NFL this year, and inarguably, in my opinion, the best center in the NFL this year in Frank Ragnow. So guard and center are not a need at all. Now, you could make the argument that if Jonah Jackson leaves in free agency, which I don't think he will, I think the Lions will find a way to re-sign him. But if he leaves in free agency, you could say that the other guard spot then becomes a big question mark. I think they're probably going to re-sign Graham Glasgow too. But needless to say, I don't think PFF is correct here. Defensive line is a very, very, very big need. They don't have anybody that can rush the passer at a high level, but there is not anybody worth taking at that position here. There was a run on edge rushers in this draft, so Detroit is shit out of luck. However, because there was a run on edge rushers, a corner that has no business being here fell, and that's Cooper DeJean. I really like Cooper DeJean. He's a tremendous athlete. He's probably going to return punts for this team next year. I think Khalif Raymond is either going to be a cap casualty or his contract expires, so I think they'll probably move on from him. But I think he's going to be able to return punts and kicks. I also think he's a pretty good scheme fit who is very scheme versatile. He does have more upside in zone, which the Lions do not run zone as much as other teams, but there's a good chance that the Lions are looking for a new defensive coordinator after this year, one way or another. I know I'm kind of done with Aaron Glenn, but that's just me. Needless to say, I do really like Cooper DeJean. I think he is somewhat scheme versatile, although he definitely would be better in a more zone-heavy scheme. The Miami Dolphins with the 29th pick of the draft. The game plan for them is pretty simple, if I'm being honest with you. Who the hell ran the fastest 40-yard dash in this upcoming draft class? Who did it? Because you're a Miami Dolphin. Get ready to move to Florida with that 0% state income tax. No, but in all seriousness, this is not a team that has a whole lot of needs. I could be talked into a tight end. I do really like Bell and Sanders. I think I'll probably end up with having both of them with top 40 or top 50 grades. So I don't know, but I'm going to go a little bit different direction. I'm going to take Armanius Mims, who I really like. And I think if he was healthy, he would be getting talked about a lot more in terms of the first round and probably even like the top 20. I think he's right there, assuming health. I think he's right there with J.C. Latham and Talisa Fuaga in terms of right tackles in this draft class. I think he's going to be a very, very good player in the NFL. He has the size to be able to handle speed around the edge. He has the power to be able to deal with power rushers. And I think he's a plus athlete for the position as well. So I am going to go ahead and go with Armarius Mims. With the 30th pick, the Philadelphia Eagles are on the draft class, and unfortunately, the last Georgia player that I think is worthy of a first-round pick is off the board here. Now, you could legitimately see them reach for that corner, whose name I am forgetting, Kamari Lassiter. You could legit see them reach for Kamari Lassiter. I don't like him nearly as much as PFF and a couple of other places do. So I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to go out of left field here a little bit, and I'm going to take Edgerrin Cooper, who I think is the only linebacker that I'm probably going to end up with having a top 40 grade on, and I might not even have a linebacker with a top 50 grade either. I really, really like Edgerrin Cooper. He is a top 3 linebacker in all of college football this year. I think he's well worth a first round pick. And more importantly than that, he fills a massive hole in this Philadelphia defense. And yeah, the secondary play has been bad this year. Yes, we all know that. But there isn't particularly a secondary player that I am comfortable taking here right now. And I am comfortable taking Edgerton Cooper. So that's what I'm going to do. The 49ers are the next team on the clock. And I am not sold on Graham Martin as a tackle, but either way, they need help along the offensive line, and he is my highest graded offensive lineman that I have right now. And before we get into the final pick of this draft class, I'm going to tell you a couple of players that I don't have going in the first round. Tez Walker. I haven't watched film on him, so I don't know if he's a first-round quarterback, wide receiver, but I would be surprised if he ends up being in my top 10 wide receivers in this class. Leonard Taylor, I also don't like him nearly as much as other people do. I've talked about Michael Penix. There's a couple spots where I could see Michael Penix going. I think the best place for him to go would probably be Seattle if they want to move on from Geno Smith, or maybe let Michael Penix sit for a year behind Geno Smith. I don't know, but he's someone who I think is very much team and scheme dependent at the next level. Dependent isn't the correct word, but I really think his success and failure is going to come from the players he has around him and the offensive scheme rather than from him. The last sort of player that I want to talk about here is JT Tuimoloau, who I do like. I currently have a top 40 grade on him. I have a feeling he might slip down the draft board a little bit, but he is a dominant run defender. He's probably the second best run defender at the edge position in this draft class, and he does have some serious upside as a power rusher. His bull move is very good. He just doesn't have any counters or really anything else that he can go to consistently. So with the Ravens here on the clock, they have a bunch of smaller, shiftier kind of guys at the wide receiver position. So we are going to go ahead and give them a big body X receiver. And the last sort of guy like that I really, really like is Adonai or A.D. Mitchell. And as PFF is going to go over here, you can look at the whole draft again if you want to. I'll kind of leave it right here. You can pause the video, scroll down a little bit. You can pause the video. But either way, I really like Adonai Mitchell. I think he's exactly what the Ravens are missing on offense. I think he's someone that Lamar Jackson has never really had a player like him to throw the ball up to, who can be a deep threat, who can be physical, who can win without necessarily getting separation. I really like him, and I think he's a fantastic fit for the Baltimore Ravens. But that's just me. And what do I know? I'm just some asshole on the internet giving you his opinion. So it's at this point I'd like to remind you to like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and if you disagreed with me or if you just had something to say, go ahead and drop a comment down below. And now with the outro done and out of the way, there's only one thing left to say, and that's that I'll see you next time.